Transportation disruptions don't always leave store shelves empty. What usually happens first is that prices start rising much faster than most people expect. Some foods are affected almost immediately, while others don't get more expensive until weeks or even months later. By the time most shoppers notice what's happening, getting prepared has already become much more expensive. These warning signs are no longer just theory. At the beginning of 2026, the U.S. cattle herd had fallen to just 2 million head, the lowest level in decades. Feed costs, transportation expenses, and other parts of the supply chain continue to put pressure on food prices. In today's video, we're going to look at 12 foods that are most likely to see prices rise first, why they're especially vulnerable, and how to prepare wisely so you can save money before prices climb even higher. 12. Oats. It's the beginning of the week. You walk into the grocery store to pick up a box of oats like you always do. But instead of the shelves being fully stocked like usual, only a few boxes are left. The price is higher than the last time you bought it. That might surprise a lot of people, because oats aren't the kind of product that usually shows up in headlines about inflation or supply chain disruptions. But that's exactly what makes them one of the most important foods to pay attention to. Oats depend on a long chain before they ever reach a store shelf. They have to be harvested, transported to processing facilities, packaged in paper or plastic, and then shipped by truck to grocery stores across the United States. If fuel costs go up, truck drivers become harder to find, or deliveries slow down, the final price starts to change. What's important is that oats aren't just a breakfast cereal. They're also one of the best foods to keep in long-term storage. A bag of oats can last for more than a year if it's kept dry and sealed airtight. You can cook it into hot oatmeal, make overnight oats, bake with it, add it to smoothies, or even use it to stretch portions in many other meals. With one simple ingredient, you can make dozens of different meals. That's also why families often buy oats in bulk when they're trying to save money. When food prices begin to rise, foods that are nutritious, store well, and are easy to prepare usually become a priority. That can cause demand to rise faster than supply for a period of time. If your family eats oats regularly, there's no need to buy a huge amount all at once. A more practical approach is to pick up one extra bag each time you go grocery shopping while prices are still stable. Then transfer it into an airtight container or storage bin to protect it from moisture and insects. That way, it stays fresh longer, and you won't be forced to buy it after prices have already jumped. Transportation disruptions rarely make a product disappear overnight. They usually begin with very small changes. One delivery truck arrives late. One shipment is smaller than usual. A price goes up by just a few %. Then those small changes gradually add up into a trend that every shopper can eventually feel. Oats may not be the most attention-grabbing item on the grocery store shelf, but when transportation costs start climbing, it's one of the foods worth preparing for before everyone else starts thinking about it. 11. Coffee mornings in America usually begin the same way. A coffee maker turns on. The smell of coffee fills the kitchen, and just a few minutes later, millions of people are ready to start a new day. It's such a familiar routine that most people rarely stop to ask, how do those coffee beans make it onto grocery store shelves right on time, week after week? Unlike many other foods, most of the coffee Americans drink every day isn't grown domestically. The supply comes mainly from countries like Brazil and Vietnam, the world's two largest coffee producers. That also means that before it reaches the cup on your table, every coffee bean has already traveled thousands of miles. After harvest, the coffee beans are processed, packed into bags, and shipped to seaports. From there, they're loaded onto container ships, cross the ocean to the United States, and then continue by truck to roasting facilities, distribution centers, And finally, to grocery stores or coffee shops. If just one link in that chain slows down, everything that follows is affected. That's why coffee reacts so quickly to disruptions in the global supply chain. A drought reduces production in Brazil, a poor harvest in Vietnam, higher fuel costs, higher ocean freight rates, containers arriving at ports more slowly. Each small change adds a little more to the cost. And when those increases build up at every stage, the final price on the shelf starts to change. What's worth noting is that many people assume coffee prices only go up when supplies become tighter. But in reality, the coffee beans themselves are only part of the story. What consumers are paying for also includes international shipping, port operations, domestic logistics, and the process of getting the product to individual stores. As transportation becomes more expensive, a bag of coffee becomes more expensive too, even if the quality hasn't changed at all. If your family drinks coffee every day, there's no need to stockpile huge amounts. A more practical approach is to buy it while prices are still stable and choose whole beans whenever possible, since they hold their flavor longer than ground coffee. Once the package is opened, transfer the beans to an airtight container and keep them in a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight. Many people store coffee in the refrigerator hoping it will last longer, but coffee beans easily absorb moisture and odors from other foods, which can reduce their quality over time. A morning cup of coffee may seem like a very small part of everyday life, but for that cup to stay full at a stable price, thousands of miles of transportation, dozens of logistics links, and an entire global trade network have to work together every single day. Coffee doesn't just reflect the price of an agricultural product. It reflects the health of the entire global transportation and trade system. 10. Peanut butter. There's a reason peanut butter is a staple in the kitchens of millions of American families. It doesn't need refrigeration before it's opened. It's high in protein, packed with energy, and can become breakfast, lunch, or a quick meal in just a few minutes. But because it's so familiar, many people don't realize it's also one of the products that feels the impact when transportation costs begin to rise. At first glance, the price of a jar of peanut butter seems like it should depend only on the peanut harvest. In reality, that's just a small part of the story. Before a jar of peanut butter reaches a grocery store shelf, manufacturers also have to pay for the vegetable oil used in processing. Plastic jars, lids, labels, cardboard boxes, packaging costs, and multiple stages of transportation before the product reaches consumers. That also means that even if peanut prices barely change, the retail price can still go up if packaging becomes more expensive or logistics costs continue to rise. That's the part many people overlook. When fuel prices rise, delivery trucks become more expensive to operate. When freight costs increase, manufacturers have to pay more to move raw ingredients to production facilities and finished products to retail distribution centers. Each step may only add a small amount, but when those increases build up across the entire supply chain, the difference eventually shows up on the grocery store price tag. That's also why peanut butter is often seen as a perfect example of how inflation spreads through the food industry. The main ingredient isn't always what determines the final price. Sometimes the fastest rising costs are the ones people pay the least attention to, like packaging and transportation. If your family uses peanut butter regularly, buying a larger jar when it's on sale is usually more economical than buying several smaller ones. Once it's opened, keep the lid tightly sealed and store it in a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight. With natural peanut butter that doesn't contain many stabilizers, the oil often separates and rises to the top over time. One simple trick is to store the jar upside down for a few hours or a few days before using it. The oil will slowly move toward the bottom, making it much easier to stir everything back together and helping keep the peanut butter at the bottom from drying out. A jar of peanut butter may seem like just another ordinary item in your shopping cart. But behind it are peanuts from farms, vegetable oil from processing plants, packaging from multiple suppliers, and hundreds of miles of transportation before it ever reaches a grocery store shelf. The price of a jar of peanut butter isn't determined by peanuts alone. It reflects the cost of the entire supply chain behind that product. 9. Canned tuna. Some foods only last a few days if the power goes out, but others can sit on a shelf for years without ever needing refrigeration. Canned tuna is one of them. That's why whenever the supply chain is disrupted, it's often one of the first items many families buy. Not because it's rare, but because very few foods can provide a dependable source of animal protein without relying on refrigerated storage. Many people think a can of tuna is simply fish packed into a can and sold. In reality, its journey is much more complicated. It all begins with fishing vessels that spend days or even weeks at sea. These boats consume large amounts of diesel fuel to power their engines, navigation equipment, refrigeration systems, and the storage needed to preserve the fish immediately after it's caught. When diesel prices go up, the cost of every fishing trip goes up as well. Once the boats return to port, the fish is transported to processing plants where it's cleaned, cut into fillets, cooked, packed into steel cans with water, oil, or brine, sealed, and sterilized at high temperatures. The finished product is then packed into cases, loaded into containers, and shipped to distribution centers before finally reaching grocery store shelves. That supply chain alone involves more steps than most people realize. If diesel prices rise, fishing costs increase. If steel prices rise, the cans become more expensive. If container shipping costs rise, transporting the finished product becomes more expensive too. Each step changes only a little, but when those increases add up, the price of a can of tuna gradually rises, even if the weight and quality of the product stay exactly the same. That's why canned tuna often reflects changes in the global supply chain so clearly. It doesn't depend only on fish in the ocean. It also depends on fuel, packaging materials, and the transportation network that moves the product from the processing plant to every store. If you regularly stock up on canned tuna, take a few seconds to inspect each can before buying it. The surface should be intact, with no swelling, leaks, or rust. In particular, avoid cans that are heavily dented around the lid or the seam, since that's the area that keeps the product sealed. A small dent on the side of the can may not be a problem, but damage along the seam can reduce the safety of the food inside. During a transportation crisis, the first foods to be disrupted are usually the ones that rely on an uninterrupted cold chain from the production facility to the grocery store. Canned tuna is different. Its entire processing and preservation process is completed long before it reaches the shelf. A can of tuna isn't just a convenient pantry item. It's also one of the most dependable sources of protein when transportation systems and the cold chain are disrupted. 8. Sugar. Unlike many perishable foods, sugar can be stored for a very long time if it's kept properly. But while its shelf life barely changes, its price can move surprisingly fast after a poor harvest or a shift in international trade. Many people assume sugar prices depend only on sugarcane or sugar beet production. In reality, extreme weather in major producing countries can reduce supply, while export restrictions can make the global market even more competitive. But that's only part of the story. After it's refined, sugar still has to be packaged and transported through multiple stages before it reaches food manufacturers and retail stores. If logistics costs increase at any point along the way, the final price goes up as well. A rainy season that arrives at the wrong time, a prolonged drought, a decision to restrict exports, or higher transportation costs. When several of these factors happen at the same time, sugar prices can change much faster than most people expect. If your family uses sugar regularly, there's no need to stockpile large amounts all at once. What's more important is storing it properly, so nothing goes to waste. Once the package is opened, transfer the sugar into an airtight container and keep it in a dry place. Moisture is the most common reason sugar clumps together and becomes harder to use. A bag of sugar can sit quietly in your pantry for months, but the price of the next bag could be completely different if weather, international trade, and the transportation system are all disrupted at the same time. 7. Cooking oil. Whenever gas prices go up, the first thing most people think about is how much more expensive it will be to drive. Very few people look at the bottle of cooking oil in their kitchen and realize it can be affected by the very same crisis. But in reality, these two things are much more closely connected than they appear. Many people think cooking oil is simply an agricultural product. As long as the harvest is good, prices should stay stable. But that's only part of the story. The bottles of cooking oil on grocery store shelves are mainly made from soybeans, canola, or palm oil. These aren't just ingredients for the food industry. They're also key raw materials for producing biofuels. That's when everything starts to change. As demand for biofuels increases or countries expand their renewable energy policies, more processing plants need vegetable oils to produce fuel. That means the energy industry and the food industry begin competing for the very same raw materials. The same soybean, the same canola seed, the same supply of palm oil. But now, two different industries want to use them. If production can't grow fast enough, that competition quickly shows up in the price. And that's not the only factor. Extreme weather can reduce crop yields. Droughts, heavy rains, or unusual temperatures can all shrink the supply of vegetable oils. At the same time, palm oil depends heavily on production in Southeast Asia. Canola is influenced by harvests in Canada, and soybeans are traded throughout the global market. It only takes one weak link for prices to start moving. After the oil is extracted, it still has to be refined, bottled, and shipped to distribution centers before it reaches store shelves. So if transportation costs continue rising during a logistics crisis, the pressure on cooking oil prices becomes even greater. That's why the price of cooking oil doesn't just reflect the harvest. It also reflects the energy market. It reflects global trade, and it reflects transportation costs. If your family uses cooking oil regularly, there's no need to buy too much all at once. What's more important is storing it properly so the quality doesn't decline before you use it. Keep the bottle in a cool, dark, dry place, and avoid storing it next to the stove or near a window with direct sunlight. Heat and light are the two biggest factors that cause oil to oxidize more quickly, reducing both its flavor and its shelf life. When we look at a bottle of cooking oil, we usually think about frying a meal or sautéing vegetables. But behind that small bottle are soybean fields, canola fields, and palm plantations, the energy market, global trade, and the transportation routes that connect them all. An oil crisis doesn't just drive up gas prices. It can also make your dinner more expensive, starting with the bottle of oil sitting on your kitchen shelf. 6. Rice. A bag of rice can sit on a grocery store shelf for days. From the outside, it seems like one of the most stable foods you can buy. It doesn't need refrigeration. It doesn't spoil easily. And much of the rice sold in the United States is grown right here at home. That's why many people assume rice is barely affected when the transportation system runs into trouble. In reality, it's just the opposite. Even if the rice is grown in Arkansas, California, Louisiana, or Missouri, it still has a long journey before it ends up in your shopping cart. After harvest, The rice is taken to a processing mill where the husks are removed. The grains are sorted by quality and then packed into bags of different sizes. From there, it's shipped to central warehouses before being distributed to thousands of stores across the country. Throughout that entire journey, trucks play the most important role. Trucks move the rice from the farm to the mill. Trucks move the rice from the mill to the warehouse. And those same trucks deliver the final bags of rice to the grocery store near your home. That's why many people focus only on the harvest and forget about the rest of the supply chain. A good harvest doesn't automatically mean prices will stay stable. If transportation costs rise, if there aren't enough truck drivers, or if logistics are disrupted, the final price can still increase even when there's no shortage of rice in the United States. Packaging is part of the story too. Every bag of rice requires packaging, printing ink, product labels, and transportation to reach the right store. As the cost of those things goes up, they gradually become part of the final retail price as well. After bringing rice home, many people take one extra step to help it last even longer. They place the bag of rice in the freezer for about 72 hours before transferring it into an airtight container or a storage bin with a tightly sealed lid. This helps reduce the chance of insect eggs hatching during long-term storage. After that, simply keep the rice in a dry place away from moisture, and it can maintain its quality for a long time. A bag of rice isn't just the result of a successful harvest. It's also the result of an entire transportation system working every single day. And when that system runs into trouble, even one of the most stable foods can begin to rise in price. 5. Flour. It all begins in the wheat fields. Wheat is one of the crops most sensitive to the weather. A prolonged drought, extreme heat during grain development, or rain arriving at the wrong time during harvest can significantly reduce yields. As supply tightens, wheat prices begin to rise long before shoppers notice any changes in the grocery store. But wheat kernels still aren't flour. After harvest, they have to be transported to flour mills, where thousands of tons of wheat are cleaned, separated, ground multiple times, and sifted into different types of flour every single day. It's a process that requires a tremendous amount of electricity, equipment, and operating costs. As energy prices, labor costs, or maintenance expenses increase, milling costs rise as well. That's why the price of flour doesn't depend only on the harvest. It also depends on the ability to turn wheat into flour, and bakeries are usually the first to feel it. When flour prices rise, bakeries rarely raise their prices overnight. Many try to keep customers by accepting lower profit margins, making products slightly smaller, or cutting back on familiar promotions. Only when those options are no longer enough do prices begin to change. By the time consumers notice, small businesses have often been adapting for weeks or even months. If your family uses flour regularly, there's no need to stockpile large amounts. Buy a little at a time while prices are still stable and store it in an airtight container to protect it from moisture and insects. When you use it, follow the FIFO method. Use the oldest flour first before opening the newer one. It's a simple habit that helps keep your flour fresh and reduces waste. A bag of flour on the shelf may look completely ordinary, but if your favorite local bakery suddenly raises its prices, or your favorite loaf of bread gets a little smaller, that's usually not just the bakery's story. It's a sign that changes in the wheat fields have begun making their way to every family's dinner table. 4. Milk. There's one food where if just one link in the transportation chain runs into trouble, time is no longer measured in days. It's measured in hours. That food is milk. When we pick up a carton of milk at the grocery store, we usually notice only the expiration date printed on the package. But what determines whether that milk is still safe to drink began long before it ever reached the shelf. Unlike rice or flour, which can sit in storage for months, milk doesn't have that luxury. As soon as it's collected, it has to be cooled almost immediately to maintain its quality. From the farm, specialized tanker trucks transport the milk to processing plants under carefully controlled temperatures. After it's pasteurized or ultra-pasteurized, it continues through refrigerated storage, refrigerated trucks, and finally to grocery stores, where it's placed in the refrigerated cases we open every day. Throughout that entire journey, the cold chain can hardly be interrupted. It only takes one refrigerated warehouse losing power, one refrigerated truck breaking down, or one delivery being delayed for too long, and an entire shipment of milk may no longer meet the standards for sale. That's why milk is considered one of the foods that depends most heavily on the cold chain. But the story begins even before the milk is collected. To produce milk, dairy cows have to be fed corn, hay, and many other types of feed. If drought reduces feed production or transportation costs for those ingredients go up, the cost of raising dairy cattle goes up as well. That means the pressure doesn't begin at the processing plant or on the refrigerated truck. It begins on the farm. By the time consumers see higher milk prices on grocery store shelves, those costs have been quietly building through every stage of the supply chain. If your family wants to prepare for periods when transportation may be disrupted, there's no need to fill your refrigerator with fresh milk. A more practical option is to keep a few unopened cartons of UHT milk or an appropriate supply of powdered milk on hand. They last much longer, don't require continuous refrigeration before opening, and are especially useful during power outages or when grocery shopping becomes difficult. A carton of milk on the dinner table may seem perfectly ordinary, but behind it is an entire race against time. And if the cold chain slows down at any point, it stops being just a story about the dairy industry. It quickly becomes a story for every family standing in front of the refrigerated dairy case at the grocery store. 3. Tomatoes. There's a contradiction that many people don't notice until they're standing in the produce section. Sometimes, a few fresh tomatoes cost more than an entire can of processed tomatoes. At first, that sounds hard to believe. But once you look at the journey they take, it makes perfect sense. Tomatoes are one of those foods that are constantly racing against time. Once they're harvested, they continue ripening every single day. That's why they have to be transported quickly and stored under the right conditions to reduce spoilage. That's where refrigerated trucks become essential. If transportation is delayed because of driver shortages, logistics bottlenecks, or higher fuel costs, losses increase as well. Tomatoes that become bruised or ripen too quickly never make it onto store shelves, and those losses eventually get built into the price of the tomatoes that do. But the story starts even earlier. To produce a successful harvest, farmers need large amounts of fertilizer. When fertilizer prices rise, growing costs increase before the season even begins. After harvest, the tomatoes still have to be packaged, kept refrigerated, and transported before they finally reach consumers. That's why the price of fresh tomatoes can change very quickly, even when the fields themselves don't seem much different. That's also why fresh tomatoes aren't always the most economical choice. During periods of rising prices or unstable supply, canned tomatoes often provide better value. They're processed shortly after harvest, have a long shelf life, and work especially well in sauces, soups, pasta dishes, and stews. A fresh tomato on a grocery store shelf doesn't just reflect the price of produce. It also reflects fertilizer costs, refrigerated storage, and the entire journey required to deliver a highly perishable food to the right place at the right time. 2. Lettuce. There's one food whose value isn't determined by how many days are left before its expiration date. It's determined by how many hours it still stays fresh. That's lettuce. You've probably opened your refrigerator's crisper drawer and found a head of lettuce that still looked green. But by the very next morning, the edges of the leaves had already started turning brown, becoming soft, and losing their crispness. That's the same race against time lettuce faces from the moment it leaves the field until it reaches the grocery store. Unlike many other foods, lettuce has almost no time to wait. As soon as it's harvested, it has to be cooled, then quickly moved through refrigerated warehouses, refrigerated trucks, and distribution centers before reaching the produce section. Because for lettuce, time is also a cost. It only takes one truck arriving late, one overloaded cold storage facility, or one distribution center falling behind. The lettuce may still arrive, but its quality won't be what it was before. As losses increase, retailers have no choice but to spread those costs across the lettuce that's still good enough to sell. That's why lettuce prices can rise quickly, even when production in the fields hasn't changed very much. If your family buys lettuce regularly, focus on storing it properly instead of buying too much at once. Don't wash the lettuce before putting it in the refrigerator unless you're planning to use it right away. Place a dry paper towel inside the storage container or bag to absorb excess moisture. That one small change can help keep the lettuce crisp much longer and significantly reduce food waste. A head of lettuce may look completely ordinary in your shopping cart, but if the transportation chain slows down by just a few hours, what disappears isn't just its freshness, it's the value of the product itself before it ever reaches your table. What's one? Beef. If there's one food that shows most clearly why prices could continue rising in the months ahead, it's beef. Most people don't realize it until they're standing at the meat counter and notice the price per pound is higher than the last time they shopped. But by then, the crisis actually began years earlier. Not in the grocery store, out on the pasture. At the beginning of 2026, the U.S. cattle and calf herd had fallen to about 86.2 million head, the lowest level in decades. Prolonged drought damaged grazing land, feed costs climbed, and many ranchers were forced to reduce their herds to cut their losses. What's important is that the cattle industry can't recover in a single season. From the time a rancher keeps heifers for breeding until those animals produce market-ready cattle usually takes years. That makes it difficult for the beef supply to recover quickly, even after weather conditions improve. But the impact of higher beef prices doesn't stop at the beef counter. When beef becomes too expensive, many families switch to chicken, pork, or other protein sources to save money. As demand rises, the pressure quickly spreads to those alternatives. That's why rising chicken or pork prices aren't always caused by problems in those industries themselves. Sometimes, they begin with a shortage of beef. If your family eats beef regularly, there's no need to stockpile large amounts. Take advantage of sales when they happen. Divide the meat into individual portions before freezing, and stretch it with beans or mushrooms in stews, sauces, or ground beef dishes, so your meals stay filling while using less meat. A package of beef on the grocery store shelf doesn't just reflect the price of one food. It reflects years of drought, a shrinking cattle herd, and a chain of effects that can spread across the entire meat department before most consumers even realize what's happening. After everything we've covered, perhaps the most concerning part of a transportation crisis isn't empty store shelves. Most grocery stores will still have food in stock, but prices may keep creeping higher, packages may get smaller, and familiar sales may gradually disappear before most people even notice. The most important lesson from today's list is that each food may be affected by a different problem, but in the end, they all lead back to the same place: the supply chain. That's why smart preparation isn't about buying as much as possible. It's about understanding which foods are most vulnerable, buying them while prices are still reasonable, and storing them properly to avoid waste. Once you understand what's happening behind the grocery store shelves, you won't have to shop in a panic. Instead, you'll be able to make better decisions for your family.